Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 9th chapter of Inheritance written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. I have a feeling that this chapter is going to hit me right in the feels, just like the last one. This fanfiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe It's Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game, and it indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. A visit to All Might in rehab cements a theory about Izuku's quirk. Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 9. The building they parked at was a 2-story, modern-looking one. All of the windows were mirrored so that no one could see inside from the outside, and Izuku watched himself walk beside Sir Nightai in the reflection they cast as they moved toward the door. This place takes care of heroes who are recovering from serious injuries, Sir told him as he entered a passcode on the number pad beside the door. If you see anyone you recognize, please do not interrupt their sessions. They are here so they can return to their hero work as soon as possible. Yes, sir! Izuku said firmly, determined to behave impeccably so there would be a good report if his father asked Sir about him later. Izuku had been expecting a quiet atmosphere and hushed voices, like the other times he'd been in a hospital. Instead, it was bright and it looked like one of those ads on the television for fitness centers. There was exercise equipment everywhere, and the clink of weights tapping each other as men and women worked through their reps. There were also people in scrubs, standing by many of them, giving encouragement or instructions, and a lot of grunting from people being pushed to perform. It was all very interesting. Izuku did recognize at least 2 of the heroes he saw, but said nothing, as he kept close to Sir's side. He was led to an elevator. However, instead of going up, as he expected, they went down. Not 1 floor, but 2. In this underground space there was more sturdy-looking equipment, a large open area and a single bedroom off to the side. There was even a little walled-off room with a small pool and an even smaller pool with steam rising from the surface of the water. It seemed like a space to hide the fact that the world's #1 hero was in residence, which made sense. He wondered who else got this type of treatment or privacy when All Might wasn't there. A very short man leaning on a walking stick was standing off to one side as All Might did pull-ups on a bar attached to the wall. "Who's the kid?" the short man asked. Suddenly, All Might dropped from the bar and landed on his feet, panting. "You shouldn't be that tired yet," the short man told him, sounding concerned. "You just started." "It came on suddenly," All Might said. Sir Nightai looked thoughtful at this announcement. "This is Midoriya Izuku," Sir told the short man. "I told you about him." The short man grunted and gave a sniff. "Thought he'd be older and bigger." "Are you feeling better?" Sir asked All Might, approaching the hero with Izuku following him like a shadow. "I was, but there's this feeling like tugging inside me. I can't explain it. It came out of nowhere, and it's making me feel drained all of a sudden." Izuku looked at All Might in concern. He looked pretty much the same as the last time he'd seen him, except for the wide swath of bandages wrapped around his middle. "Interesting. Let me perform a small experiment." Sir said, sounding thoughtful. Izuku, come with me. He ushered Izuku back toward the elevator and called to the two men. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Monitor how you feel once we leave. The door slid closed, and Izuku looked up at Sir Night-Eye with solemn concern. You think I'm making him feel sick, don't you? Yes, Sir said, sounding more interested than upset. I think your quirk senses his weakness, and is trying to prepare to take his quirk. I can't take All Might's quirk! He's not gonna die! Izuku said in panic. Correct, Sir said, placing a hand on his shoulder as they exited the elevator on the main floor. The nature of his quirk will not allow it to be forcibly taken, and he is not going to die in the near future. If Sir was saying it, it must be true. Izuku could feel the tension that had suddenly tied his heart in a knot loosening. Izuku followed along behind him as Sir travelled through the facility to a small room with what looked like a cafeteria, but also had a bank of vending machines. He pulled out his wallet and fed money into a machine that dispensed drinks. He purchased 4 cans of tea and handed 2 to Izuku to carry, and took the other 2 himself. The cans promptly reacted to Izuku's Teflon quirk and slipped from his fingers before he could adjust his grip to hold them from the bottom. His reflexes were good though, and he managed to snag them before they hit the ground and tuck them into the crook of his arm. Oops, he said in embarrassment. I forgot to grab my gloves before we left my place. Sir regarded him with a small, indulgent smile before leading the way back to the elevator. So, how can I be making All Might sick if he's not dying? Izuku asked, getting the subject back on track. I think your quirk can tell when someone is weakened, physically, maybe even mentally. I think it kind of sends out feelers, as it were, to check if a new quirk will be inherited soon. Because All Might is currently not in top shape, your quirk is kind of like a curious ant, scouting out new territory. Izuku appreciated the analogy, but it still concerned him. Does that mean I shouldn't be around him until he's all better? Izuku asked. Possibly, Sir admitted. The reason we came up here is to see if your absence negates the weakness he began to feel when you arrived. Izuku liked that Sir didn't try to dumb down his vocabulary when he spoke to Izuku. Sometimes he didn't fully understand what some stuff meant, but he could still figure it out even without someone explaining. So, he should feel better when I'm gone? Izuku asked. That's what we're checking, right? We're going to go back and see if it happens again. Precisely, Sir told him with a nod. Are you ready? I'm afraid that if he starts to weaken, we'll have to leave and meet with him some other time, when he's built his strength again, more or even over the computer. Does he even want to meet with me? Izuku asked. He didn't want to force his company or his presence where it wasn't wanted, even if it meant missing out on spending time with All Might. He'd already lost his friendship with Kachan because of that, and it hurt. To cause harm or annoyance to a man he'd idolized for as long as he could remember was unthinkable. I'm not sure it's a question of wanting to, so much as needing to, Sir told him cryptically. All Might be having a bit of trouble accepting that he might not be as strong anymore as he was before his fight with All for One. What does that have to do with me? Izuku asked as they made their way back to the elevator. It was a big worry that All Might was weaker than he had been, especially since he might not have had to fight All for One if it hadn't been for Izuku. I'm hoping that he will see in you what I've seen in you, he said, and that he'll help us with your quirks and get you ready to be a great hero someday. Again, Izuku didn't exactly understand what he meant, but wasn't about to argue with the idea of having help from All Might himself. He remained silent and a little tense as they descended to the underground space and cautiously stepped out of the elevator. All Might and the short man were having a conversation, but it stopped when Izuku appeared. All Might stood with his trademark smile on his face and came closer. "I'm feeling much better!" He paused for a moment before finishing, saying, "Now?" The smile gradually disappearing into a puzzled frown as he paused mid-step. "Do you feel it again?" Sir asked interestedly. "I do," All Might said, sounding also intrigued. "It's not as strong as before, though. It's very strange." He got down on one knee to be closer to Izuku in height and studied him intently for a moment. "I can leave," Izuku said, backing up a step but coming up against Sir Night-Eye, who was behind him. "Give it a little time, Izuku-kun," Sir advised kindly. "Do you feel anything, Gran?" All Might asked the short man. "Nope, not a thing," the man said gruffly. "Do you?" he asked Izuku. Izuku shook his head and inadvertently turned transparent. "It's fine, young man," All Might told him, the smile returning to his face. "Just unexpected. You're not hurting me at all." Izuku was not so sure about that, but All Might didn't look pained and Sir Night-Eye wasn't pulling him away. He breathed again and became fully visible. "I got your letter, young man," All Might said, as he might address a frightened puppy. "It really lifted my spirits. It's no fun being stuck in a hospital, especially when there's no one around to talk to but these two." Izuku looked at the short man curiously when he snorted. He was stocky, but looked pretty strong despite his walking stick. The wrinkles around his mouth and nose told him that he must be relatively old, and his hair was snow white, though that wasn't always an indicator of age.
"I've written you lots of letters,"
Izuku told him, reassured.
"I sent them to your fan club, and my dad said you probably don't read those because if you did, you wouldn't have time for anything else."
"What do you think?"
"I think you probably read some, but there's no way you can read all of them,"
Izuku answered honestly.
"But that's okay. I think maybe you read the ones that people are smart enough to send to you at Might Tower. Or maybe there's someone who reads them for you and gives you the most important ones."
"You're pretty smart," All Might said approvingly. Izuku smiled. He was really talking to All Might, and it was okay. "How old are you, kid?" the old man asked. Izuku looked up at Sir questioningly, and he nodded. "This is Gran Torino. He's a retired hero and a good friend." Izuku had never heard of Gran Torino before, and he wondered about how many other secrets All Might had that no one knew anything about. For the #1 hero in the world, he did a good job keeping people important to him out of the public eye.
"I'm 10,
he answered.
"I'm in the 5th grade.
"You sure you want to start him this early?" Gran asked, looking at Sir. "It's never too early to learn the basics of one's quirk," Sir answered with a shrug. "If he learns how he could possibly apply them to hero work while he's at it, what's the harm? It's not like we're asking him for a huge commitment just yet." Izuku looked back and forth between the adults, who all seemed to be having a silent conversation with just their eyes. Unless Gran Torino was a telepath or something, and helping them all speak with their minds. He also didn't miss the word yet in Sir Night Eye's comment. Was he talking about becoming a hero or something else? Gran looked Izuku over before shrugging. He seems to be in a decent shape, he admitted grudgingly. What are your quirks, kid?
The first one my dad called inheritance on the registry forms he filled out. That's the one that gives me new quirks. Though Granny Ito said that man gave me at least one other one, so I'm not sure. I got my mom's pulling quirk. I can move small objects to me, but nothing heavy.
Izuku had all of this memorized by now, since he seemed to have to recite it for every new person he met.
Then I found out that I turn see-through when I hold my breath,
he said. We just saw that one, All Might said with a nod of encouragement.
I can change the color of anything plastic by touching it. And for some reason, I can tell what people want to eat when they're hungry, he said.
He pointed to Gran Torino and said,
You really want a custard-filled taiyaki right now.
He always wants taiyaki, All Might said with a chuckle.
All Might isn't hungry right now, but Sir wants sushi for lunch,
Izuku supplied. He's not wrong, Sir said with a wry smile.
I have a balance and agility quirk that helps me land without getting hurt and lets me do neat tricks. I can also make a small animal's fur grow by petting it, and stuff won't stick to my skin if it gets spilled on me. The last one I got, the one I got from the lady that the villain guy took me to meet, I guess she had a levitation quirk that lets me float in the air.
Float? All Might asked, suddenly looking at Gran Torino. It's almost like a sign! Gran didn't look convinced that whatever All Might was talking about meant anything. Don't get so caught up in the idea that you end up putting all your eggs in one basket, Toshi.
That one was the hardest for me to figure out,
Izuku admitted.
I had to wear a weighted backpack for a while, and I got sent to quirk counseling and training to get it under control. I was going to gymnastics before, but they're on break for the summer.
Gran Torino gave a long, low whistle. That's a lot of quirks, kid. Izuku nodded a little uncertainly, not sure if it was a criticism or just an observation.
9,
Izuku said with a nod.
My dad did some checking in the records from the doctor who was helping the villain guy. Dad knows for sure how I got my mom's quirk and that lady's levitation quirk. Also that the see-through quirk happened at the hospital in Taiwan. The rest of them are kind of a mystery. They say that All for One might have given them to me using his quirk.
He was experimenting on you, Sir Night Eye confirmed. We think we know why, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to take you under our wing, so to speak. Shigaraki Tomura escaped with the Warp Gate villain, and that doctor that was aiding them. It's important that you have protection, and that you're able to protect yourself as much as possible. Izuku nodded consideringly. It was scary to know that there might be still people out there who wanted to keep doing stuff to him even though All for One was gone.
You're all going to teach me?
He asked, somewhat in awe. He wasn't exactly sure why All for One had been experimenting on him, but he was glad it wasn't going to happen anymore. He knew it had something to do with trying to figure out why Izuku was physically able to house so many quirks within his body without being hurt. He wondered why All for One hadn't just taken away his quirk, if that's what his own quirk allowed him to do. Maybe he couldn't, because it was too much like his own. Why hadn't they used All for One's blood instead? Maybe they had, and they thought Izuku's quirk worked in a different way. "That's the plan," All Might told him with a smile. "As long as you work hard and want to learn." "We'll be working with you for the remainder of your summer break, at the very least," Sir said. "After that, we'll have to see what can be arranged, but your formal education comes first and foremost." Izuku nodded in understanding, but couldn't help the excited gleam in his eye. At the moment, he felt like the luckiest kid in the world. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. More wholesomeness, this is exactly the way I wanted to start the new year. Happy New Year to you all, and I hope you have a wonderful year. Just a heads up though, college is starting back up, and you may have a couple weeks with uploads going up later than usual, just because I have to get back into my routine. But with that being said, all credits go to the original creator of this fanfiction. A is for Amy71 on AO3. I would highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel, and you hit the notification bell to be notified of when I next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah!